Your Excellency, Ambassador Joseph Cole, thank you for the honour of joining us at the conference and for your very interesting speech. We'd like to ask you a few questions in order to hear your thoughts and opinions on some salient issues. To begin, in regards to the new era that you mentioned in your speech, what recommendations would you give for strengthening the capacity for international law to encourage the universal adaptation of human rights?
First of all, thank you for your invitation. It was a new experience for me. Regarding your question, I think we're living in a world of change, where the age of impunity is being taken out of the equation, and a new form of cooperation is being introduced, which is the global justice. I think the media today has brought real-time events to our sitting rooms. We see the atrocities being carried out all over the world, which makes people very angry, and thus putting pressure on their governments to ensure that international institutions like the International Criminal Court are functional and operational, and also that the perpetrators of these atrocities against humankind are brought to justice. I think that where domestic justice fails, it is important that we move on to international justice. The International Criminal Court is an example of this, and we have seen that certain perpetrators, the Balkan Wars is an example, Rwanda is another example, where the major players who made and brought pain to their countrymen were brought to justice at this court. Maybe for the future we would like to see less political intervention when it comes to taking action against international atrocities. Sometimes we have two ways to measures. Certain countries we punish them, other countries we just leave going on. So we need to address that particular issue. But on the whole, I think that the ICC should be given more respect, should be more supported by all countries of the world. And also I think we have to have a look whether the present structure of the United Nations are enough to face the challenges of today and the challenges that the United Nations might face in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree. Moving on, talk a little about human rights. Some would argue, or some would have the opinion, that human rights is predominantly a cultural issue. Would you agree with that? And furthermore, how do you think we can really get the balance between universal international human rights and also respect for individual cultures?
Well, sometimes it's difficult to define what human rights are, so let's try to define what human rights are. Okay. Well, a human, we're part of a Homo sapiens species. So human means you're man, woman, or child, right? Rights. They are something that everybody is entitled to. So basically human rights are rights that are entitled for by all human beings. If you're alive and you're human, you're entitled to your human rights. Well, I don't think it's simply a cultural issue, it's also a political issue. Cultural rights are also a political issue. Okay, culturally it can be a tool to bring people together, like music does, like sports does. Culture can bring people together. They can be a tool for people to understand each other, to tolerate more each other, their practices, their traditions. But I think the most important factor is the political aspect of human rights. It shouldn't be. As I said before, sometimes we use two ways to measures to take action against certain people. This should not happen. So it's important that we blend the political, the social and the cultural aspects of human rights together to ensure that the universal concept of human rights is applied to everybody in every part of the world.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Let me ask you something. In your role as ambassador of Malta to the Netherlands, what do you see as the greatest barrier to ensuring universal adherence to international law?
First of all, let me say that the bilateral relations between Malta and the Netherlands are excellent. So my job here is to maintain those relations. Fortunately, being a small country, we have a very small diplomatic service, and we have to be very flexible. So I'm not just the ambassador of Malta to the Netherlands, but I'm also Malta's ambassador and permanent representative to the OPCW and the International Criminal Court of Justice. I'm happy to say that we have one Maltese judge has been serving in the tribunal for Rwanda for the last 5 or 6 years. He's been doing a great job, so that's one aspect of us, Malta as a small country, giving contribution to human rights. As I said, the relations between our two countries, Malta and the Netherlands, are very good. We don't foresee any particular problems regarding human rights in Malta or human rights in the Netherlands. We have one cultural event coming up, which is very important to both countries, which is in 2018. Our capital city, Valletta, and city in the Netherlands, Leeuwarden, will jointly host the European Cultural City of the Year in 2018. So this also will bring us more together to understand each other.
Okay. Speaking in cultural terms, and lastly, can you define in your own words what cultural diplomacy is to you, and what the role of cultural diplomacy can play, and what role cultural diplomacy can play in the promotion of human rights?
Well, cultural diplomacy is soft power. So you can use soft power to convince people to do certain things, but you don't need to impose it, because if you impose your culture, your practices on other people, it's going to be very hard. This is also what applies to politics. So you can't impose your own criteria of democracy on countries in North Africa, for example, which are completely different than we are used to in Europe. Culture, as I said, can be a tool to bring people together. Culture can make people understand each other, be more calm in discussing issues, try to find solutions. And I think that instead of banging on the tables or trying to organize summits or political dialogues, I think we should reflect a little bit before going to the political aspect of issues we have. Maybe you can use culture to soften the way. It is a soft power after all, soften the way. So at the end of the day, we get political results.
I completely agree that it's basically how I would define cultural diplomacy too. On behalf of the ICD, we want to thank you for taking the time and talking to us and answering our questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, madam.
You.
Thank you very much.
You're very insightful.